Hi everyone! Did you watch Wimbledon this weekend? More importantly, did you see Princess Charlotte in her smock dress at Wimbledon this weekend? Hi, I'm Lisa. Welcome to my sewing studio where we talk all things sewing and smocking. And today we are talking smocking. For years, I have been saying that smocking isn't something just for small children. So I was so excited to see Princess Charlotte this weekend in her beautiful smocked dress. Now, wouldn't you like to make a dress just like that? In fact, you could make almost the exact dress for your daughter or granddaughter. Well, it's really easy, and in this video, I'm going to show you how. Hi, I'm Lisa, the owner and designer behind Pink Holly Bush Designs, a line of sewing patterns for children, most of which include the option for smocking and most of which are for knits. But today we are not talking about knits, we are talking about smocking, and we're going to take the July Flowers pattern by Pink Holly Bush, and I'm going to show you how to very simply adapt this pattern to make Princess Charlotte's dress. Now you're also probably thinking, but Lisa, the smocking on the July Flowers dress is below the waist and Princess Charlotte's was above it. Yes, that's the adaptation I'm going to show you, and it's really simple. Now you're probably thinking, but Lisa, that July Flowers pattern is sleeveless. Well, yes it is, which is why I have a free download for you that includes number 1, the flutter sleeve to add to the dress, and number 2, a smocking design plate that mimics the one that Princess Charlotte was wearing. So by taking the July Flowers pattern, the free flutter sleeve, the smocking plate, and making the few changes that I'm going to show you here in this video, you can produce that exact dress. And when I say exact, that dress is made out of Liberty Lawn, which is available. And I will put some links down below where you can go, and at least in the States, definitely over also in the UK, and I believe in Australia as well, that you can pick up that Liberty print if you would like. Get yourself a copy of the July Flowers pattern, the free downloads, and let's make Princess Charlotte's dress. So let's go over to my cutting table and I'm going to show you how we can do that. All right, so here's our July Flowers bodice pieces, both the back and the front. And the first thing we're going to do is from this point here where the shoulder curve meets the side seam, we're going to measure and just put a mark. Now the amount you need to measure varies depending on the size you're making. I'm working with a size 3 here just to keep everything small for purposes of the video. But in that free download is a chart that will tell you how much you need to measure here. So for this little size 3 that I have, I'm going to measure just 1 1/4 inches. And notice you don't want to measure flat, you want to measure with the curve, along the curve, and I'm just going to put a mark. I'm going to do that on my back as well. And that is going to be for our flutter sleeve. It's going to go from those little marks. Now that's all I need to do to the back, so I'm going to set that aside. And now we're going to look a little bit more at our front. So in order to put that smocking right at the bottom of the bodice, but not into the skirt, and also to have it where it sort of is functioning almost like a cummerbund on her, we're going to use a smocked insert rather than having the smocking flowing simply from the dress. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the amount that you're going to measure is going to be in that download, and it's going to be based on the size you're making. So I'm going to measure from the waistline, and for this size 3, I'm going to measure up 3 inches. You'll be measuring up more for the larger sizes, but again, that's in that download. And I'm just going to draw a line across this with my ruler. Now this is going to be my stitching line right there. But I need to allow for seam allowance. So I'm going to come in and draw a second line, and the July Flowers pattern has a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm drawing my cutting line. So this is my cutting line. And this is going to be my stitching line. Can't spell stitching. Okay. And then I'm going to take my regular paper scissors, and I'm cutting on that cutting line. And this is going to be now my new front bodice piece. I'm going to cut the skirt out just as it is in the pattern with no changes, but I'm not going to smock the skirt. I'm going to gather it, and I'm going to follow the pattern directions for the gathered version. Okay, here's my new bodice. Now for the smocked part, I said we're going to use an insert. So I'm going to cut a strip of fabric. It's going to be the height that's listed in that free download, and it will vary depending on what size you're making. And for the width, I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to measure, start at this side, and I'm going to measure the width of the bodice. Did it wrong again. Okay, let's try again. We're going to measure the width of the bodice, and the size 3 is 12.5 inches. Now, smocking is done in a 3-to-1 ratio. So I'm going to take that 12.5 inches, and I'm going to times it by 3. And I have 37.5 inches. So my insert needs to be 37.5 inches wide by the height specified in the pattern. Now, I do know that this piece right here has a seam allowance. When I times by 5, that didn't take into account that I did have those seam allowances. Especially if you're using Liberty, it is very thin. Having a little bit extra, keep it simple. Having a few extra pleats and a little bit more fullness is going to be a good thing. So just measure the entire width of the bodice of the size that you're making, multiply it by 3. That is the width that you need to pleat up for your insert, and then follow the height based on what I have in that download. Once you've taken your insert and you've smocked it, you'll sew it to your top bodice, and then you will just follow the pattern, treating this whole top bodice as your bodice piece. Everything else, as far as the pattern is concerned, will be the same. Now here's my bodice pieces, my front bodice piece and my back bodice piece. I've sewed the shoulder seam, pressed it open, and hopefully you can see here's my 2 little notches that I marked for my sleeve. And here's my sleeve piece. I've cut it out. Put it over here where you can see it, sorry. Here's my sleeve piece. I've cut this on the fold. It's a nice long piece. The straight edge down here is the hem edge of the sleeve. And the first thing I've done is hem that. So to do that, you have a 1/2 inch seam allowance here for that. You could just narrow hem it by doing a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch and stitching it. But what I've done on my sample is, if you have a serger, I've just serged it with a 3-stitch narrow hem. Now, if you notice Princess Charlotte's dress, there's a little pop of color right along that hem edge. And if I did mine with white, which doesn't help you, but you certainly could get thread that would be darker and give you that little contrast, that little pop of color right along the hem edge by using your serger and that 3-thread narrow hem. Now, another option, a wonderful heirloom option, would be to use a little colored lace. And my friend Kelly made this adorable little bishop for my granddaughter Nia, and she used this lovely cotton crochet lace. I will put a link to it down below. I still have a little bit of it left if you would like to do that. This is attached with a simple roll and whip, and I have a video on how to do that, and I will also link to that. So if you'd like to use that hem treatment, you could do that. So that would be an option. You'll notice while I'm here that Kelly also put it here at the neckline, and again, Princess Charlotte's does have that little pop of color at the neckline as well. However, another option to give yourself that little pop of color would be to pipe the neckline. And I do have a video on how to do that as well in the July Flowers playlist, and there will be a link to that below as well. All right, let's go back to that sleeve. So you're going to finish the hem edge of the sleeve with whatever method you want to do that. And then the long curved edge, you're going to run 2 long basting threads to gather it. So I've run one at 3/8 of an inch and one at 5/8 of an inch. I've also made sure, let's see where it is here, there's my notch. I've marked that center notch that's on your pattern, okay? And that's gonna go right here at the shoulder seam. So we're gonna put that at the shoulder seam. We're putting right sides together. Pull that. And then we're just gonna take this, we're gonna pull up those gathering threads. I've done it on the one side, and we're gonna put that other curved edge right at our little notch. And then we're gonna pull these up to just match that shoulder seam. And we're going to sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance because that's what we have in our pattern. It's also marked on your pattern piece. I'm going to do the same thing to this side. I can get my basting threads loose here. Line that up. I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and just sew this quickly so I can show it to you. I will be right back. So here's my finished ruffled sleeve, okay? Now we have to take care of this little part down here. So what I've done is I've trimmed down my seam allowances, okay, just to get rid of some of the bulk. And then I've taken this part beneath, I pressed everything out, so wrong sides all to the wrong side, and I pressed, that's the rest of the seam allowance, and I just have stitched it down on both sides, okay? Now, in your pattern, the directions are to finish the armholes with using the burrito method. But when you use that, and it's a wonderful method, but it requires that the entire bodice be pulled through this shoulder opening. And with the added bulk of the flutter sleeve, there's no way that is going to work. So we have to finish our bodice a little bit different than the pattern directs. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that. It's not hard. So as I show you, we did this to finish our armhole edges. These are my lining pieces, and here's my armhole edge. And what I've done is just gone to my iron and pressed the seam allowance to the wrong side along this armhole edge. Right, I followed the directions and I sewed the lining to the bodice at the back button edge and around the neckline, okay? And then this is the part that's different from the pattern. I sewed the side seams of the front bodice. Remember, this is where your smocking is going to be, to the back bodice. And I sewed the side seams of the lining pieces, the front bodice to the back bodice. And then from the inside, you'll see here's my lining pieces. There's that pressed edge. And what I'm going to do is just press this under, well, finger press it under, and I'm just going to pin it, matching everything up. And that pressed edge should line up. Okay. You're just going to go along this bottom part. You want to just put it so it's just to the wrong side slightly so it won't be showing. But then once you get to the sleeve, right, the sleeve will be covering it. And we're just going to go around and pin it all the way around. And then, yes, I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you to do this, but I recommend that you just then slip stitch this by hand. A safety pin in there, which isn't good, in place. And the reason I recommend you do that is that way it's just going to give, you see, you're going to have this beautiful finish inside, and there won't be anything itchy to scratch, you know, the little girl who's wearing this. And yes, it's going to take a few extra minutes to do it this way, but you'll end up with, you know, this will be the inside. Sorry, I don't have another half of a bodice around the front there for my sample. This will be the inside. There's your shoulder, and you'll have, you know, just this. There we go. Fix it better, right? Just a really pretty finish for your sleeve. Okay, and that is how you'll finish your bodice. So that's going to be the inside, once I stitch it down, of your July flowers dress. And let's turn it side out here. Okay, that's the back. There's your front, all nicely finished, and your smocking will be right here going into your gathered waist. I hope you're going to give the July Flowers pattern and sewing your own Princess Charlotte dress a try. If you need more help with the construction of the July Flowers dress, as I mentioned, there is a complete playlist here on YouTube showing you step-by-step how to sew the dress, and I will link to that both above and below. If you need help with your smocking, I will have a link to my Get Started Smocking series below that will give you links to how to do each of the stitches. I also have a course on how to smock if you need that. The link will be down there below. Make sure to check that all out. And please grab your free downloads with the free Princess Charlotte smocking plate and the flutter sleeve pattern piece. If you do make this dress, the July Flowers dress, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your versions of it. And I hope you enjoy making this dress for a special little girl in your life. Happy smocking.